Claire Evans walked into the NATO training compound in a faded white shirt and soft brown hair that hung loose. She looked like someone who got off at the wrong stop. She stood in the back, unnoticed, until a male recruit joked, "Delivery girl got lost." Captain Dyer narrowed his eyes and snapped, "Name. Why aren't you on the list?" What no one knew was that the silent woman before them had once commanded the secret Phoenix unit, and when the faint lines of steel wings peeked from beneath her collar, a veteran trainer stopped in his tracks. "That's no mistake. That's the mark of a Phoenix commander." Her boots scuffed the dirt as she stood there, hands loose at her sides, eyes fixed on a spot just past Dyer's shoulder. The recruit who'd mocked her tall buzz cut with a smirk that screamed small-town quarterback leaned over to his buddy and muttered, "Bet she's here to clean the barracks." A few others chuckled, their voices sharp in the morning chill. Claire didn't flinch. She shifted her weight just enough to square her shoulders, and the laughter died down like they'd hit a wall they couldn't see. Dyer, all crisp uniform and clipped words, waved a hand. "Evans, right. Logistics. You're in the wrong place. Kitchen units that way." His tone wasn't cruel, just impatient, like he was shooing a stray dog. She nodded once, slow, but didn't move. The air felt heavier, like everyone was waiting for her to shrink and disappear. She didn't. The first drill was a gear check, and Claire's bag was dumped out in front of everyone. A wiry female recruit with a fake smile and manicured nails kicked through her stuff, a worn notebook, a cheap pen, a folded map. "This is your kit," she said loud enough for the whole squad to hear. "What did you rob a gas station for supplies?" The group laughed, and she held up the notebook, flipping through it like it was trash. "No wonder you're so quiet. You've got nothing to say." Claire knelt to gather her things, her hands steady, but her lips pressed tight. The recruit tossed the notebook into the dirt, letting it land, open pages flapping in the wind. A few others joined in, stepping on the map, smudging it with their boots. Claire picked it up, dusted it off, and tucked it back in her bag. She didn't look at them, but her fingers lingered on the zipper just a second too long. Before the moment could stretch too long, a whistle cut through the compound. Training was starting. The recruits shuffled into formation, and Claire fell in at the back, her steps quiet but sure. Nobody noticed how her eyes scanned the terrain, every rock, every dip in the path. Nobody saw the way her fingers flexed, like they were remembering the weight of a rifle. The morning was all business drills, briefings, and a 10-kilometer trail run through the mountains. The kind of run that broke egos. The recruits were cocky, joking about who'd finish first. Claire just tied her laces tighter, her face blank. When the starting horn blew, she took off, not fast, not slow, just steady. The others surged ahead, their breaths loud, their boots pounding. She stayed in the middle of the pack unnoticed. By kilometer 3, the group started to spread out. The quarterback recruit was up front, his arms pumping, his face red. Others were already panting, their water bottles sloshing. Claire didn't carry water. Didn't stop to adjust her shoes. She just kept moving her stride, even like she was born on that trail. At kilometer 7, the leader started to falter. The quarterback slowed, his chest heaving. One guy tripped, cursing as he hit the dirt. Claire passed them one by one, her breath still steady, her shirt clinging to her back. When she crossed the finish line, the timer clocked her at 3 minutes ahead of second place. She stood there, hands on her hips, her skin flushed, but her eyes calm. The others straggled and gasping, staring. Nobody said a word. The quarterback looked away, wiping sweat from his brow. As the recruits caught their breath, a stocky sergeant with a voice like gravel called for a navigation test. Each recruit had to plot a course through the forest using only a compass and a map. Claire stepped up, her map still smudged from the earlier jeers. A lanky recruit with a permanent sneer grabbed her compass before she could start. "Let's see if the delivery girl can find her way home," he said, tossing it into a muddy puddle. The group howled, some clapping like it was a show. Claire crouched, fished the compass out, and wiped it on her sleeve. Mud streaked her arm, but she didn't pause. She plotted her course, her pencil moving fast, precise. When the test began, she hit every checkpoint, first her steps sure, while others stumbled. The lanky recruit missed 3 markers and came back red-faced, muttering excuses. Claire folded her map and slipped it into her pocket, her face blank but her eyes sharp. During a break, the recruits were sent to the armory to calibrate training rifles. Claire was checking her weapon when the wiry female recruit from earlier sauntered over, her nails tapping the table. "You hold that, like you've never seen a gun," she said, loud enough for the room to hear. "What's next? You gonna cry when it kicks?" The other snickered and she leaned in, knocking Claire's rifle scope out of alignment. "Oops," she said, her smile venomous. Claire didn't react. She picked up the scope, adjusted it with quick practiced movements, and fired a perfect shot at the range. The room went quiet, the wiry recruit's smile frozen. Claire set the rifle down, her hands steady, and walked out. The sergeant running the drill scribbled something on his clipboard, his eyes following her. "Hey, real quick, if this story's hitting you, could you pull out your phone, give this video a like, drop a comment below, and hit that subscribe button? It means the world to keep sharing stories like Claire's stories about people who rise above. Thanks for being here with me. Now let's get back to what happened next." The day didn't end with the run. After the trail, the recruits were sent to the barracks to clean up. Claire grabbed a fresh shirt from her bag, plain gray, just as worn as the white one. She stepped behind a partition to change, but not fast enough. A female recruit, sharp-eyed with a ponytail so tight it looked painful, caught a glimpse of something under Claire's collarbone. A sliver of ink. The woman's phone was out in a second, snapping a photo before Claire could pull her shirt up. "What's that?" the recruit called out, her voice dripping with fake curiosity. "Your ex's name." "A heart." The barracks erupted in laughter. Another guy stocky with a loud laugh chimed in. "Nah, it's gotta be one of those butterfly tattoos. Thinks it makes her tough." The ponytail recruit smirked, holding up her phone. "Let's see it, mystery girl. Show us the art." Claire's hands paused on her collar. She tugged the fabric higher, covering the tattoo, and turned to face them. Her eyes were steady, like she was looking through them, not at them. "It's nothing," she said, her voice low but clear. The room went quiet, not because she'd shouted, but because something in her tone made the air feel tight. The ponytail recruit opened her mouth, then closed it. Claire picked up her bag and walked out her steps, even her back straight. Behind her, the laughter started again, but it was thinner now, less sure. Nobody followed her. Later that evening, during a mess hall break, Claire sat alone at a corner table, a cup of black coffee untouched in front of her. A group of recruits at the next table started a game, tossing balled-up napkins at her tray. The quarterback led the charge, his grin wide. "Think she's too good for us," he said, landing a napkin in her coffee. The others laughed, egging him on. "Maybe she's just slow," a woman with cropped hair added, flicking another napkin that hit Claire's arm. Claire didn't move. She picked up the napkins one by one and set them neatly on the tray. Then she pushed the tray aside and leaned back, her eyes scanning the room. The group kept going, but their laughs grew forced. When she finally stood, tray in hand, and walked past them, the quarterback's napkin fell to the floor. She didn't look back. Outside, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the compound. Claire sat on a bench near the mess hall, her bag at her feet. She pulled out a small knife, not a weapon, just a tool, and started cleaning dirt from under her nails. It was a habit, something she did when she needed to think. A few recruits passed by whispering. "She's weird," one said. "Doesn't talk, doesn't fight back. What's her deal?" Another, a wiry guy with glasses, shrugged. "Probably some nobody who lucked into a spot. Won't last." Claire's knife didn't pause. She didn't look up, but her jaw tightened just for a second before she let out a slow breath and kept working. In the quiet of the evening, a junior trainer named Harris, older and soft-spoken, approached Claire on the bench. He'd been watching her all day, his eyes catching details. Others missed her steady hands, her unhurried steps. He sat down not too close and pulled out a worn leather journal. "Saw your map work today," he said, flipping to a page of old sketches. "Reminds me of someone I trained with years ago. She marked her routes the same way." He showed her a drawing, a map with precise lines eerily like hers. Claire's fingers stilled on the knife. She glanced at the sketch, then at him, her expression softening for the first time. "She must have been good," Claire said, her voice quiet. Harris nodded, closing the journal. "She was..." disappeared after a mission. Never saw her again. He didn't push, just stood and left, but his words lingered. That evening in the briefing room, Captain Dyer was going over the next day's schedule. Claire stood at the back, as always, her arms crossed. Sergeant Grant, a grizzled veteran with a limp and a face like weathered stone, was there too, watching from the side. He hadn't said much all day, but his eyes kept drifting to Claire. During a break, she stepped outside for air, and her shirt shifted as she leaned against the wall. Grant was close enough to see it, the tattoo just a glimpse of steel wings. His face changed. Not fear, not surprise, but something deeper, like he'd seen a ghost. He didn't say anything to her. Instead, he walked straight to the secure records room, his limp more pronounced in his hurry. Inside, Grant pulled up classified files, his hand steady but his breath uneven. He found it a grainy photo of the Phoenix insignia, 2 iron wings crossed behind a sword etched in silver ink. The file was locked, marked eyes only. He cross-referenced the nano detail, the way the ink caught light. It was her. No question. He grabbed his phone and called Dyer. "Don't touch her," he said, his voice low. "Don't even look at her, Ron. That's Claire Evans, Phoenix Commander." Dyer laughed short and sharp. "You're seeing things, Grant. That girl, she's nobody." Grant didn't argue. He just hung up and sat there staring at the screen, the weight of what he'd seen settling in. During a night exercise, the recruits were paired for a stealth drill, and Claire was stuck with the ponytail recruit who'd been itching for a chance to shine. In the dark, the woman deliberately sabotaged Claire's path, snapping branches to draw attention and whispering fake coordinates over the radio. "Let's see how the tattoo girl handles this," she hissed, smirking as a trainer's flashlight swept close. The squad blamed Claire when they were caught, their voices sharp. "She's useless," the ponytail recruit said, loud enough for the trainers to hear. "Can't even follow a map." Claire stood in the spotlight, her face calm but her hands clenched behind her back. She didn't defend herself. She just adjusted her headset and started over, leading the team through the next route flawlessly. The ponytail recruit's smirk faded as Claire's path outmaneuvered every obstacle. The next morning, a supply truck rolled into the compound, and Claire was tasked with unloading crates alongside a burly recruit with a chip on his shoulder. He shoved a heavy box into her arms, grinning when she staggered. "Too much for you, princess," he said loud enough to draw a crowd. "Go back to flipping burgers." The others laughed, some mimicking her stumble. He kept piling on crates, each one heavier, until her arms shook. Claire didn't drop a single one. She stacked them neatly, her face set, sweat beading on her forehead. When the truck was empty, she wiped her hands on her shirt and walked away. The burly recruit's grin faltered when a trainer noted Claire's perfect inventory count while his own was short 3 crates. During a midday lecture on tactical theory, Claire was called to the front to answer a question about flanking maneuvers. She started to respond, her voice steady when the cropped-hair recruit interrupted, mimicking her tone in a high-pitched whine. "Oh, look, the janitor's got opinions now," she said, sparking laughter from the room. Others piled on, shouting fake questions. "How do you mop a battlefield? Got a strategy for dishwashing?" Claire paused, her hands resting on the table, her eyes scanning the crowd. She finished her answer precise and correct, then sat down. The trainer, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, nodded slightly, her pen circling Claire's name on her roster. The cropped-hair recruit's laughter died when the trainer asked her the next question, and she fumbled it completely. The next morning, Dyer was in a mood. The run had shaken him. Claire's time was too good, too clean. He didn't like it. Didn't like her. During roll call, he zeroed in on her, standing at the back in her faded shirt. "Evans," he barked loud enough to turn heads. "Step forward." She did her movements, smooth, unhurried. The other recruits watched, some smirking, some curious. Dyer crossed his arms. "We've got a problem. That ink of yours. We don't know what it is. Could be a gang mark. Could be a spy's code." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The ponytail recruit whispered, "Told you she's shady." Dyer's eyes narrowed. "Take off your shirt. Prove you're clean." The air in the compound went still. A few recruits shifted, uncomfortable. One guy, lanky with a nervous laugh, muttered, "This is messed up." But nobody spoke up. Claire stood there, her face unreadable. She didn't argue, didn't hesitate. She reached for her collar and pulled it down just enough to show the tattoo. The iron wings gleamed in the sunlight, the sword sharp and unmistakable. The silver ink shimmered like it was alive. A recruit in the front row gasped, her hand covering her mouth. "That's the Phoenix mark," she whispered. The words spread like fire. Dyer's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. "Doesn't prove anything," he snapped. "Could be a fake." Before Dyer could push further, a young radio operator barely out of basics stepped out of the comms tent, his face pale. He'd been monitoring classified channels all morning, and something had come through, a coded signal, old but unmistakable. He clutched a printout, his hands shaking, and handed it to Grant. The paper had a single line, "Phoenix 1 confirmed presence." Grant's eyes flicked to Claire, then back to the paper. He folded it, tucked it into his pocket, and whispered to the operator, "Keep this quiet. No one else sees it." The kid nodded, but his wide eyes stayed on Claire like he'd just seen a legend come to life. Grant's salute to her later that day carried a new weight, unspoken but clear. Sergeant Grant stepped forward, his boots heavy on the dirt. He didn't look at Dyer. He looked at Claire, and he stood at attention, his hand snapping to a salute. "Commander Claire Evans," he said, his voice steady. "I apologize for the delay." The recruits froze. The ponytail recruit's phone slipped from her hand, hitting the ground. Claire met Dyer's eyes, not with anger, not with triumph, just calm. Like she'd been waiting for this moment and wasn't surprised it had come. She let the collar fall back into place and stepped back, her hands loose again. The compound was silent, the kind of silence that hurts. Dyer wasn't done. He couldn't let it go. His face was red now, his voice tight. "You think you're Phoenix?" he said, almost spitting the words. "Fine. Prove it." He turned to the group and picked 3 recruits. The quarterback, the wiry guy with glasses, and a broad-shouldered woman who'd been quiet but fast on the trail. Survival exercise. Live conditions. "You 3 hunt her down. Bring her back." The recruits nodded, their faces a mix of nerves and excitement. Claire didn't react. She just said, "I don't claim anything. I just act." Her voice was soft, but it carried. She picked up her bag, checked her knife, and walked toward the forest. The exercise was brutal, 20 minutes of stalking through dense trees with the recruits armed with training gear and radios. They were good trained to move as a unit. But Claire was something else. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She moved like a shadow, her steps silent, her eyes catching every broken twig, every scuff in the dirt. When the quarterback got close, she was already behind him. She disarmed him with the single move, her hands quick and precise, and tied his wrists with his own belt. The wiry guy was next. She dropped from a tree, her knife at his throat before he could blink. The woman lasted longest, but Claire ambushed her at a stream, leaving her tied to a stump. When it was over, Claire walked back to the compound, the Phoenix insignia flag tucked into each recruit's pack. She didn't say a word. Midway through the next day's training, a combat drill went wrong. The recruits were practicing close-quarters maneuvers, and Claire was paired with the lanky recruit who'd tossed her compass. He saw his chance and tripped her during a grapple, sending her sprawling into the dirt. The squad laughed, and he stood over her, taunting. "Not so fast now, are you?" he said, kicking dust onto her shirt. Others joined in, circling her, their voices loud. "Get up, loser," one called. "Or stay down where you belong." Claire rose slowly, brushing off her sleeves, her face blank. She didn't strike back. Instead, she stepped into the next drill, outmaneuvering him in seconds, her movements so fluid he didn't see her coming. The trainer blew the whistle, nodding at her. The lanky recruit's face burned and the circle went quiet. The recruits straggled back, bruised and quiet. The quarterback wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. The wiry guy kept rubbing his wrists, muttering about how she'd moved too fast. The woman just shook her head like she'd seen something she couldn't explain. Dyer stood there, his hands clenched, his face a mask. The other recruits were whispering now, piecing it together. "She's not just good," one said. "She's something else." The ponytail recruit was pale, her phone still on the ground where she'd dropped it. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody mocked her. Claire stood at the edge of the compound, cleaning her knife again, her face as calm as ever. In the quiet of the next morning, a logistics officer was sorting personnel files when she stumbled on a sealed envelope marked with a faded Phoenix stamp. Curious, she opened it, revealing a photo of a younger Claire mid-mission, her tattoo visible under a torn sleeve. The attached report detailed Operation Phoenix, redacted but clear. Claire had saved an entire unit single-handedly. The officer gasped, her coffee spilling, and ran to Grant. He took one look and nodded. "That's why she's here," he said. "Not to train. To lead." By noon, whispers of the files spread, and recruits who'd mocked her now avoided her gaze, their bravado gone. During a late afternoon medical drill, Claire was assigned to demonstrate field triage. As she bandaged a dummy with precise, practiced hands, the burly recruit from the supply truck snorted loudly. "What's this playing nurse now?" he called out, sparking chuckles. He grabbed a bandage from her kit and wrapped it sloppily around his own arm, mimicking her movements in a mocking dance. "Look, I'm a hero too." The laughter grew, and someone threw a gauze roll that bounced off her shoulder. Claire didn't stop. She finished the triage, her hands never faltering, and handed the trainer a perfect report. The trainer, a quiet medic with years in the field, watched her closely, then turned to the burly recruit. "You're dismissed," he said. "Your technique's a liability." The recruit's face fell and the laughter stopped cold. That afternoon the air changed. A low rumble broke the silence and heads turned as a heavy-duty helicopter descended onto the field. Dust swirled and a ministry officer stepped out, his uniform crisp, a sealed envelope in his hand. He didn't look at Dyer. He didn't look at the recruits. He walked straight to Claire and read aloud, his voice clear. "Claire Evans is hereby reinstated as Field Commander of Phoenix under Supreme Command authority." The words hit like a shockwave. The recruits lined up, their salutes sharp, their faces a mix of awe and shame. Dyer's shoulders sagged, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. The officer handed Claire the envelope and she took it, her fingers steady. She turned and walked to the chopper, her bag slung over one shoulder. Just before she boarded, a young female recruit, the one who'd gasped at the tattoo, broke ranks and ran forward. She held out a small patch hand-stitched with the phoenix wings. "I made this for you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry for everything." Claire paused, her eyes softening. She took the patch, tucked it into her bag, and nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was enough. The recruit stepped back, tears in her eyes, as Claire climbed into the chopper. The gesture spread through the compound, a quiet ripple of respect that hadn't been there before. The fallout was quiet but real. Dyer was reassigned that night, no explanation, no appeal. The ponytail recruit's photo of Claire's tattoo leaked online, and by morning her social media was flooded with comments calling her out. Sponsors dropped her and her training slot was revoked. The quarterback was sent to a desk job, his dreams of field work gone. The wiry guy quit, saying he couldn't keep up with someone like her. The broad-shouldered woman stayed, but she started training harder, her eyes always searching for Claire's shadow. The compound buzzed with stories, each one growing bigger, but Claire was already gone. She didn't need to stay. She didn't need to prove anything. Days later, in a small office far from the mountains, Sergeant Grant sat alone looking at an old photo. It was Claire years ago in a different uniform, her face younger, but her eyes the same, calm, unshaken. He touched the edge of the photo, then slid it into a drawer. The truth was out now, and the world was catching up. Claire's name was whispered in briefing rooms, her file pulled from locked cabinets. She wasn't a myth anymore. She was real, and she was back. In the end, Claire didn't need to shout her worth. She didn't need to fight for respect. She just stood there, her silence louder than any words, her presence heavier than any title. The people who'd mocked her, who'd doubted her, they'd carry that shame forever. And the ones who'd seen her, really seen her, would never forget. Her truth wasn't in what she said. It was in what she did, how she moved, how she carried the weight of who she was without ever bending. She walked into that chopper and the blades roared to life. The dust settled and the compound was quiet again. But it wasn't the same. It never would be. You don't forget a woman like Claire Evans. You don't forget what it feels like to be wrong about someone and have the truth stare you down. You weren't alone in that moment. You weren't the only one who felt the sting. And you weren't wrong to keep going, to hold your ground, to stay quiet until the world caught up. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.